All right, so hi, I'm Emile from Tindie, and this is kind of stories, I guess, from the front lines of the hardware revolution. So let me introduce you to Tom and Elisa. They are, in this photo, they were 17-year-old high school students in London. They're now 18, applying to college. But for a science fair, they came up with an idea for a Raspberry Pi weather station. So how many people here have a Raspberry Pi or know of a Raspberry Pi? Exactly, great. So basically, it was a science fair like anything else, and they just basically decided to build their own PCB, throw a bunch of sensors that can detect humidity, gas in the air, barometric pressure, temperature, you name it, it can detect it. And this happens for only $90. So they, I think, won the science fair. They were in Wired, and this is one of an example of kind of the really popular products that are on Tindie. So we're a marketplace for maker-made electronics. So anything from Raspberry Pi, Arduino, drones, 3D printing, you name it, people can buy and sell it and list it on the site. So after they listed it on Tindie, about a month later, they had about $30,000 in sales. This is just some of their inventory in their parents' house. The parents had to give them a loan, but it all worked out in the end, and they shipped, and the V2 should be launching sometime here this month, so be on the lookout for that. But like I said, so I'm Emile. I founded the site about a year and a half ago, and we're a team of 4 in Mountain View. My background started about 4 years ago when I was kind of tired of the sales and decided to take a year off and teach myself how to code. So if you are thinking of doing that, you can do it. I did it. It does take time, and if you have questions, just find me after, and I can give you some pointers. But it is definitely possible. As I was wrapping that up, I was a developer advocate. I was starting to get into Arduino, starting to get into Raspberry Pi about 2 years ago, and anybody that was interested in Arduino, and you could start to see all these projects that started popping up. And so this is just a sample of what happened. So you've got different Altoid, MP3 players to temperature controls to robots, you name it. People are making it using Arduino as the microcontroller. And so basically I was noticing this trend along with, I guess, a lot of other people, that's why you're here, that Raspberry Pi and Arduino were just going gangbusters. So at that point, I basically just threw the question up on Reddit. If you're on Reddit, I'm sure a handful of you are, I just said, would anybody support the idea of a marketplace for Arduino, basically for custom-made electronics? And people said yes, and so I said, what the hell, let's go for it. This was the V1 on about a year and a half ago, so this is June 2012. We had, I think, 20 products on that first day, and ever since, we've had orders every single day since then. Our customers range literally from hobbyists to Fortune 500 companies to government institutions, militaries, and everything else. Colleges, schools. Getting emails from teachers trying to order 10 of something is amazing. And literally, this kind of movement, I guess, is crossing literally all boundaries from elementary school kids all the way across the board. And so at this point, we've got a community that's very similar to 3D Hubs. We're in 60 countries around the world. People are having, showing off Tindie at different maker fairs and meetups and tech spaces. We're basically all over the place. So some of these were, I think, Ireland, North Carolina, Bay Area Maker Fair, Fiji, and a couple I don't know. But people are all over the place, and it's really exciting to kind of see this ecosystem emerging. So what are people posting on the marketplace? So these are just a sample of some of the products. So like 3D Hubs, we've got a GoPro case, except ours goes to 3,000 meters under the sea. And if you're looking to go 3,000 meters under the sea, I don't think you're going to be 3D printing it just yet. But you can find that on Tindie. You can find a heart pulse sensor for 20 bucks. You can get MIDI synthesizers, and the Tapster is this robot on the right. It originally started as a robot that can play Angry Birds. Exactly, yeah. This is the latest version, and the use case is it can still play Angry Birds. You can still program it to play Angry Birds if you'd like, but it's also for app testing. So if you're a mobile developer and you want to run through a suite of tests on your app or your website, you can program it to do exactly that. It can drag, it can drop. If you need a physical device to test it, this is really the best solution that you're going to find for, that's $500. So if your time's worth anything, it's a great investment. And these are made by the Tapster is one engineer in Chicago. The GoPro case, I believe, he's in Hawaii or Florida. The heart pulse sensor is one guy in Virginia, and the MIDI synth is in London. So the people that are selling are, generally speaking, 1 to 2 person teams, more likely one person that has an idea that can actually build it and get it to market. It's totally different than Kickstarter or any of kind of the other hardware stories that you've heard, and they're posting their projects on Tindie. So in that year and a half, we've now passed 1,800 products. What have we learned from now close to 400 businesses that are working on the site? Design your product to scale. If you're trying to bring a product to market, expect to be around in 2+ years. Some people deal with end-of-life parts, so you can find a bunch of LCD screens for dirt cheap on eBay, and when you want to do version 2, you're kind of SOL. The other is don't buy parts from like a retail store. Buy them from a DigiKey or Mouser or Farnell or any of these companies. Don't buy parts at a retail price, because that's going to seriously impact the price of your product at the end of the day. And you're also going to deal with inventory constraints on their end. So that's another thing that we've seen from people selling on the site. In terms of pricing, you definitely want to make sure that you give yourself some cushion. I know everybody likes to be good-hearted, but 10% is not enough. Shocking. 2.4 to 2.6 times the BOM cost, so the cost of your materials, is generally speaking what you're going to look to do. You're going to have people that have, the parts are going to break. Some may break during shipment. Some may be, won't work if you may have tested it, but it actually, doesn't work. And once it gets to the customer, it's busted. What else are you going to see? Any number of things to account that's going to basically eat into your margins that you don't expect, and it's something that we see where people have tried to be really friendly on the price, and that ultimately comes back to haunt them, and they start to lose money once they realize that not all of their products is 100% going to work. The other is international from day one. So we've got customers in 60 countries, and it's up to you, obviously, but the community is wide enough where you're going to have people around the globe that probably will want what you're making and selling. So expect that. You may have support in foreign languages. You may have to ship to different countries, but expect that up front. And I think it's something that will help you grow quicker than you probably expected it, because we have orders for customers in Pakistan and in different other countries around the world that PayPal won't accept their payments from, so we actually can't ship to them. But literally, they're everywhere. So I would aim with that in mind, and you should go pretty far. On the distribution side, so this is kind of where we are a huge value add, and there's really kind of 3 schools of thought. So you can have your own store on your own site. You can go the traditional retail route, or you can go through a marketplace and come through Tindie as an example. There's a whole slew of different things to consider. If you're doing it on your own site, you're going to have to build the traffic yourself. So whether it's PR, marketing, however you're going to do it, people are not just naturally just going to come find your site. You're going to have to figure out how to drive traffic there. Access to your customers. If you go through traditional retail, you're not going to have access to those customers. They may come back to you after the purchase, but you're not going to have that contact pre-purchase and be able to answer questions that they may have, because they may be asking them directly to the retailer. So it's also something else to consider. Fulfillment. If you sell yourself or you sell through Tindie, you're going to have to do the fulfillment yourself, or you can obviously find a third party. Retail, some of them do that themselves, but make sure you plan for that. it's not hard, but it's something to consider, and if you want to do it yourself, you have to plan for shipping, packaging, cost of materials, things like that, that I think people leave to the last minute, and it's something just to plan for ahead of time. On the margin side, you're obviously going to make the most if you sell it yourself, but you have a lot of the other things to consider. Retail, you're looking at best, maybe 50% of the retail cost, even less, at the end of the day, depending upon the retailer. So that's something else to consider in terms of your margins to plan for accordingly, depending on where you're trying to distribute your product at the end of the day. And the last thing, and this is something that we just announced, I think yesterday or the day before, is that we've started handling fraud for our sellers. But if you sell it yourself and you sell it through a credit card processor, there are some, and I'll leave the names out, but they don't check for fraud. And so you're going to have to do that yourself, and you're going to have to watch out for it. It's something that we handle ourselves on Tindie, but you will get a call from a credit card company at some point if you don't account for that, and somebody's stolen a credit card, they've used it, they bought who knows how many of your product, and at the end of the day, you're going to get kind of the short end of the stick on that one. So something definitely to look out for. We started to see that kind of in December, but took pretty strong action and basically built our own system to start to detect that. So just something to be on the lookout for. It will happen. But so at the end of the day, so Tindie we're a marketplace. We're community people from the 3D printing world all the way to electronics and DIY to scuba divers and you name it. We basically handle payments for you and make that job easy so that you can really focus on making the product and dealing with customers as easy as humanly possible. On the fulfillment side, we have an API, so you can just directly route to that, and we'll just send orders to you as they come in. And at the end of the day, you have full access to your customers like you would if you sold directly through your own site, which is something really unique that you don't get from a traditional retail outlet. So that is really Tindie in a nutshell, and I think that the last thing to leave is this quote from Chris Dixon, one of our investors, is that one thing critics need to be careful about is that many important new inventions start out looking like toys, and a lot of people actually look at things on Tindie and say, this looks broken, or this doesn't look like it's a finished product, and we think that's great. We have things like people building their custom Super Nintendo system or parts for Game Boys. Things that people don't expect people to be making are being made, and I think it's really exciting. And if you're making some of these products, and you have projects like this, come talk to me. Love to hear about it. We'd love to help you guys out. So that's Tindie in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, and great job. Questions? One over there. So, is this mic on or not? Is it?
No.
Can you? Working? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
Hi, my name is Janine, and I work at Octopart. We're a search engine for electronic components. We've also seen data from our search engine that lots of people are going gangbusters over Arduinos or Raspberry Pis over the past few years. But most recently, we've seen people we've seen very interesting trends around BeagleBone Black. So I'm very interested to see what you're seeing on Tindie with people using BeagleBone Blacks. Yeah. And the second question, I promise is the last one, is how are Fortune 500 companies like Intel and Google and NASA using Tindie? Thanks.
Yeah. Is this on? Can you hear me? So BeagleBone is a new computer, if you're not familiar. So we've seen some, but I don't think as much as people talk about it, I guess. But it's too soon. People that are buying parts for it now will have a product in 3 or 6 months, or and so it may be too soon. But I know that the buzz is definitely there, and we're starting to see it kind of trickle in. On the companies that are buying stuff, so I won't say kind of what they're buying, but cheap components that they can reuse and break and bust, and it's just cheaper to buy them than it is to build them, I guess would be the short answer. Yeah. Yep. Hi there. Yeah. Zach Friedman. You guys can't hear me? No, this is recording a live stream.
Better? Hi, I'm Zach Friedman of VoidStar Lab. So, you guys are making selling products selling like electronics products a lot more accessible. So I'm sure there are people in here who would really like to sell electronics products, but have never built electronics products before, but they have a great idea. How would you recommend they bridge that gap?
So I think that there is a gap, and you're going to have to. Some of that's going to have to self-education at the end of the day, because you're going to have to make some judgment decisions as you learn, and you're to make depending on parts, components, costs, etc. In terms of can we help connect people with ideas and actual engineers that can help bring them to reality, I would say stay tuned.
I guess if I could put a bit of a finer point on it, do you recommend that people just pick up a breadboard and teach themselves electronics the hard way?
Yes.
Or do you think you should go to a hackerspace and meet some guys first?
Both.
Why choose?
Yeah. Everybody started at zero, so you're gonna have to learn the hard way and just start Googling and tinkering, and that's the way I did with just basic Python. You just start somewhere, and definitely if you have a hack space or a community of people that you can tap into, it's definitely great to get questions answered, and I think it's hugely worthwhile. Yeah. Anybody else?
So what's on the roadmap for this coming year? What are you guys doing, building, launching?
We're a community marketplace, so I'll just stick with that for now and stay tuned.
Okay, we will.
Yeah.
Another one?
You've mentioned that you're doing some things for fraud protection, right?
Yeah.
And you've also mentioned PayPal, and I'm assuming you're using that for reaching the entire international market. So what are you doing for fraud protection on top of PayPal, for example? My name is Nick, and I'm freelancing.
Yeah. So we do use PayPal. So we started with a third-party credit card processor and actually moved exclusively to PayPal because of that reason. So if you have international customers, PayPal is the thing that's still widely used, and many people don't have credit cards. So especially internationally, that's the norm, and so PayPal is still hugely valuable. In terms of the specifics around what we do to detect it, it's not something that we really want to say, but we do our own processing on top of it before the order comes in. So actually, after the credit card company has approved the payment, after the credit card processor has processed the payment, before we then process the order, we'll actually stop it, and if we have to, just refund the whole thing and stop it. And so before the seller even knows that there was an order came through, we've actually already handled it and taken care of it. But in terms of what are the different flags, we kind of want to keep that under wraps just so people can't work around those.
So follow up to that, if there's a dispute, does the seller have to worry about that?
No. So the one thing that we take responsibility for that. So when we added this layer in, we look at it as an additive service that we provide and something that the seller doesn't have to worry about. So if we let an order through and you ship it and it comes out, and then all of a sudden we get a call a week later from the credit card company saying this was disputed, and the customer actually doesn't live in Indonesia or wherever, we'll bite that bullet and take that cost, and the seller doesn't have to worry about it. So yep.
Great, thank you very much. That's the time we have. Thank you, Emile.